It was a year ago today that ChatGPT made its debut. Now it's the fastest growing service ever, with its parent company OpenAI boasting some 100 million weekly users and 80% of Fortune 500 companies registering accounts. We're looking into how generative AI technology has become mainstream and where it is going next. Joining us now is Mandy Long, the CEO of BBAI, which harnesses AI to solve complicated analytical and logistics issues for the federal government and big business. So let's kind of get into this here with this anniversary that we've looked at. A year ago, we were at the forefront of hearing this kind of technology, more about it. You're in this space though. So now, where we are now, one, are you surprised by how fast the adoption has been, especially when you think about generative AI?
First of all, thank you for having me. It is a fascinating day, and I think happy birthday to ChatGPT is very fair to say. You're right that the rate and pace of innovation of this kind of technology has no historical precedent. We see that. I'm a longtime technologist. I've lived in this space and worked at several organizations where we've made material investments in AI. And I think what we've learned from the last year is two things. One is that we are unequivocally in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. And two, AI is the new literacy, right? What we saw OpenAI accomplish in democratizing the availability and interaction model of AI for the average person is remarkable, right? It's changed the paradigm for interacting with technology that was previously only available to someone who understood data science.
And Mandy, I got to ask you on this day as well, though, about OpenAI, the drama there, Mandy. Sam Altman is back. You're in this industry. I'm just interested on your take of what happened there, Mandy. And also interested, do you think OpenAI did that news, did all that drama, did it deal that company a blow reputationally?
You know, I think what I take away from that, and it's a question that I think many have asked, and I think very few have answers to. But what I see representing the technical community is that it's the first representation that I think many of us have seen where the developer, right, the technical contributor, had a voice that changed the outcome and changed it very quickly. And when we look at the dynamic of how technical talent is playing a role in the development and evolution of complex businesses, I think what we can learn from what's happened in recent history is that the developer has a voice now more than ever, and we're going to see it move companies.
And Mandy, speaking of moving companies, I was having a chat with my sisters about this whole, the big issues with Altman, in, out, back in, again. What does it do for a business like yours? Does this, it's very chaotic to people watching this. Does it draw more interest, or does it make people skittish when it comes to what you all do?
So we work in many ways in a parallel community, because most of what BBAI is focused on is complex decision-making for the national security mission, right? We provide very specific mission-oriented applications of AI as well as other advanced technologies to an operating environment. And most of the questions that we get, right, and what we've seen from our customer base as well as just from the market more broadly that we service, is that there's a question of how this technology is getting applied in an enterprise format. And from our vantage point, LLMs, right, and the use of generative AI is a tool, right, in the toolbox of a technologist when applying it to use cases in the field. And that will continue to be the case.
And Mandy, you mentioned your company, your technology, your customers. How does business look right now, Mandy, as we roll into 2024? How fast are you guys growing?
We are in one of the fastest growing markets that exists right now, right? We do service in supply chain and logistics, cybersecurity, and autonomous systems. I think you'd be hard pressed to find a couple of segments that have more happening as it relates to the adoption of these advanced capabilities than those that we service. So I'm bullish, right, on where we're headed. We've done a lot of hard work over the last year to stabilize the organization and position ourselves to capitalize on that growth. 2024 is going to be a great year for us.
And then let me ask you, Mandy, about the kind of structure or guardrails around this type of AI, around generative AI. When you think about, say, ChatGPT and other chatbots, we give them so much information, right? And there's not really regulation around this. Yeah, again, I think about like a conversation with one of my sisters where she talked about doing some research. So she works as a professor, but it brought into the conversation, and it's not supposed to happen, something, private question that she'd asked previously. And she's like, hang on a second, that's not supposed, these are supposed to be separate and apart kind of conversations. What are we sacrificing in terms of privacy when you think about this space of generative AI, LLMs, and the progress that is happening when you balance that out with privacy?
It's that's a complex question, because I think a lot of what we've seen with social media in general, right, as it relates to privacy, is that, as humans and as participants in those platforms, we put an incredible amount of personal information out in the public forum. And I think we're learning about the long-term ramifications of that over time, right, as we raise our kids and we try to teach them about the idea of permanence, right, in an online format. When you think about regulation of technology like this, and you look at, for example, the executive order that came out on October 30th, there is an incredibly appropriate amount of focus on figuring out how we're going to, on an ongoing and continuous basis, put checks in place. And that's the piece that I would focus on, is what has worked historically for regulating and providing oversight of advanced technologies is not going to work here, right? I've talked previously about the idea of tech regulating tech. I do not mean that in terms of tech companies, right? I mean it in terms of core technology, helping to regulate and provide oversight of these capabilities, because it has to happen at the speed of cyber.
Mandy Long, thank you so much for joining us today, Mandy. We appreciate that time and insight.
Thank you for having me.